I think when you look at that boy, Jayden, you're also looking at what's happened in all the generations before. So his disengagement from school is not just about him, it's about a story that goes back a number of generations. I guess the work that I've done really started back in the 90s when I became a teacher at Northland Secondary College. I desperately wanted to use drama and the arts to engage young people. And that was a really big ask at the time because there was very little engagement.
You're going to have to see Mr. Broughton and spend the morning in time out. You understand why you're in trouble, Jayden. Jayden.
Yes, miss.
Come on, let's go.
So one day, me and another staff member, Susan Foley, we were in the library and she handed me this book and she said, "You've got to read this book." It was a book called Maybe Tomorrow, written by Boori and Mimi MacDonald. Boori, who's a storyteller, it was the story of his life and an incredible background that he'd come from. And really what I felt was I was seeing Australia in a way that I'd never seen it before, and I was seeing it firsthand through Indigenous storytellers. And, you know, the book really knocked me off my feet. And cut it. There's a picture on the front cover and it's got some of Boori's family members, his brothers and sister and nephew and so on. And in the first chapter, he talks about the fact that all of those people had either died young or committed suicide. And he talks about it in a way that contextualises it in terms of, I guess, Indigenous experience in this country, with incredible kind of warmth.
You know, and when I tell that story, like, people are sitting there going, you know, I say, yeah, you know, she hung herself and we had the funeral, and of course they were putting the coffin in the ground and everyone was crying, and then Auntie Paulie's a bony little thing about this big and she starts wailing like that, screaming. And all the birds took off and the goannas and the snakes took off, and she stopped your heart. She go, "Oh, Auntie, stop, don't do that." They put the coffin in, everybody said, and she's standing up pointing down going, "You're full of too young, you know, I'm hopeful it should be me, you know, take me with you, take me with you." And all the dirt gave way. And legs went up in the air, she went flat on her back in the coffin, all the dirt started falling on the coffin. And we sit there and go, "Hey, look at, she went falling." And we took her over there, see if she's already looked down, she's standing up on the coffin going, "Not now!" And I go, when we pull her out then, and she woke up, she said, "Hey, you fella never laughed at me when I've been falling now." I said, "No, he broke my heart, I was crying, he was laughing." This one.
You know, he changes attitudes and he changes hearts when he does tell stories.
To me, you know, what I do, because it deals with a lot of darkness, is that if there's no laughter, there's no light. If there's no light, there's only darkness. If there's only darkness, there's only, you know, what's in darkness. So that's why it's good to have laughter.
I read it in a day, you know, and found out that he was going to be speaking near my local bookshop only a week or two later.
Jayden, come on, come with me.
Where are we going?
We're going to see a writer.
No, thanks.
He's a storyteller.
No, I'm right, sir.
He's a black fella.
I'm coming.
I ended up just going and hearing his talk, and then went up to him and basically said, "I've got to get you to come to my school." He just gave me one look and said, "I'm on, let's do it."
How many kids have we got?
Well, we're a pretty small school, about 25 students. They're good kids, but some of them have a bit of difficulty with their literacy. They don't have the same access that city kids do.
So anyway, Boori arrived and came in and started telling stories. As this river of stories started to flow out of him for the first time, it was like this whole school came together as one. It was something I'd almost never seen, and something you almost never do see, where a whole group of people are that just in the moment. So it was just something that stayed with me, and it stayed with those kids. And then we just became, you know, we became friends, really.
John's a great writer as well, and we've worked together for 20-something years now, so he's had lots of great work.
And so for probably the last 25 years, he's been going into schools all around Australia, and in fact all over the world, telling stories.
And I've worked with over 1 million children.
I'm going to tell you a story about my frog.
Talking to a frog! What does that sound like?
He's a force of nature. He's written some amazing children's books.
My Gurgunji, Maybe Tomorrow, and of course the most recently lauded book, which is Shake a Leg, and that won the Prime Minister's Award last year. Yeah, that does deserve a round of applause.
And then when I sort of finished up teaching, I ended up working with Richard Franklin, Indigenous filmmaker, for a number of years. And when that kind of came to an end, a new phase began for me. I got the opportunity to set up this project, YouthWorks.
Great, thanks.
Hey, Mr. Big Shot, you've got to check that out.
I'm a man on a mission.
YouthWorks is based on the premise of giving young people homeless or at risk of homelessness access to creative media. So for the past nearly 10 years, we've trained and employed hundreds of young people on hundreds of commercial and community projects, as well as our own creative independent projects, a number of which have been with Boori.
Hey, you fellas should ask me for mad.
The projects with Boori have been so fantastic because I think in both of our work we're trying to give people the tools to be really articulate and passionate and authentic in telling and shaping their own stories.
If us black fellas here lose it, then you fellas lose it too.
It's programs that actually allow children into a circle that sometimes they're not allowed into. And it's very hard to make a film. It's easy to tell a story, and to tell a story a certain way, you have to have great breathing. So to have another person like John and the rest of YouthWorks be involved in this makes it breathe much better. And it makes it tell its story truer, if you like. One of the times when Boori dropped over, he told us this story and I recorded it.
So the principal comes back. He's got the book, Kiriganji, in a brown paper bag. You know, like it's drugs or money or something. It's even deadlier than that. It's a book with words in it.
A story is always a story. A good story is always going to be a good story. And I think what John and I saw, it's very simple in its context, but in its content it's really powerful.
We were talking about it and I said, oh, it just would be great to make that as a little film. And so anyway, we just said, yeah, let's do it.
Ready, one.
And what's the name of your school?
Tarnagalla Primary School.
Tarnagalla was, you know, it was at the height of summer, so it was hot and dry, but it's so visually stunning. And I mean, the whole town came on board really, I mean, it was amazing.
Khan is like a star. He's too handsome for his own good, and he has great hair, as you can see. I'm very jealous.
Khan just felt like the right person straight away. And with John Wood, you know, he's the consummate pro. You know, he just had that part, just nailed it. And working with Richard Kickbush was such a pleasure.
He's like a machine. It's definitely a learning experience. Watching him, he's like, it's just a bunch of cogs turning the whole time.
It was such a great couple of days, and it was brilliant having everyone there. And of course, Boori was entertaining everyone the whole time. He was off mucking around with the kids, as he always does.
Yeah, that's right. Go. We'll follow you. Oh my God.
The session with Boori was just amazing to see the response that he got from the kids.
He was awesome. Yeah, he's great.
What a talented storyteller.
The storytelling session, we just decided to let him go, and we wanted the kids at the school we were shooting at, Tarnagalla Primary School, to just experience him telling stories anyway. So we just rolled and let the cameras roll, pretty much let everyone forget that they were part of a film and let Boori just tell his stories. And what's wonderful about that is when you look back at the footage and you look at the kids' faces, you can see the same impact on those kids that I saw, you know, nearly 20 years ago.
The kids sat and there was no screen. There was just a book I held up. And what they had to do to make the story come alive is use the props in their head and think about it through their heart. If you look at all the different faces, they all had different ways of looking at this and smiling at it and thinking about it. And that's what storytelling does.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah, of course it is.
I remember when Boori first told me the story, I was so knocked out by the ending.
I didn't mean to see you.
I told him it was in the library, but he was adamant he wasn't going to go in there. He was scared or something.
Oh, that's probably my fault. I told him that libraries are only for white people.
That puts the story suddenly in a much bigger context than just this boy's journey. It puts it in the context of Australia's story. Disconnecting him from reading. You know,
exactly.
So it's that dawning kind of moment.
Yeah.
It's dawning and even a little bit of embarrassment.
Yeah, almost a little bit of okay. Yeah. But if you bigger picture, it's not Mum's fault. It's kind of I think sometimes people kind of underestimate the impact of the context and the history here, and the fact that in a way the 200 years of I guess, colonisation is still a very short time ago, really. And I think as, I guess, white Australia sometimes wants people to get on with it and get on with the now, but what they don't understand is that, you know, when people in the culture have been stripped of just about everything, and we're talking about the oldest living culture in the world, mind you, the impact and ramifications do become generational. And in a way, it's this boy now has the opportunity to start changing that. Boori's books are in libraries. Other Indigenous authors are in libraries. In the 1960s, that wasn't the case. And I think it's so important that we, as a people, sort of become part of, one, listening to those stories and sharing them, but also collaborating, and also working together, and also coming to those shared understandings. Indigenous Australians need to see that there is their stories, and that those stories are in the library, that they are represented, you know, in mainstream context. I think Indigenous kind of communities all over Australia, you know, are now in the process of almost reclaiming and rebuilding their culture. And Boori's at the forefront of that. And that's something that now becomes a gift for the rest of Australia.
What's to come? So mystery. What's to come? So mystery. As the sun was still, the time would never change. So I'd think how it didn't ever age. But as I check, I'm incorrect. It has the opposite effect. Seems I'd lived my lifetime in a day.